So to continue where I left off rather abruptly about Tacitus, and I wanted to go through this with you again as the text I did include there for you to read in my last video there, of a quote from Brewer's Reader's Guide. This is a book that was published back in the 1800s, but the Annals of Tacitus is said to be a forgery by Poggio Bracciolini, apostolic to 8 popes, 1381 to 1459. It is said that Cosmo de Medici agreed to pay him 500 gold sequins, or at the time that this book was written, it would have been about 160 pounds for the trouble of writing the manuscript. It says we're further told that Poggio's manuscript is still in the library of Florence, and that it was published in 1460. Now, Johannes de Spire produced the last 6 books, but the work is still incomplete. I had another date of Johannes de Spire printing it in 1468. That information I got from Robert Taylor. He did not say at the time that it was a forgery by Poggio Bracciolini. That information comes from a book by one John Ross called Tacitus and Bracciolini. And you can find that on the internet if you do a web search for it. It's quite a lengthy book. Goes into quite detail for his reasons why, not just this passage that we're dealing with, but that the entire book was believed by him and others to be a forgery. And it goes on to say again in the quote, just like I mentioned to you, that this book was never quoted. This passage that is held up by the Christians as proof of the existence of Jesus as a historical character was never quoted until the end of the 16th century. The Annals wasn't even called that until it was given that title in 1553. Within this passage, though, we don't have to say that the whole book is a forgery. It may be, it may not be. It's beyond me to prove it either way. But just reasoning out what's there, we can see that, again, Jesus is not mentioned. Just simply that these people who were called Christians, who were hated by the populace because of their abominations, and were punished for setting the fire because they admitted doing it, were called Christians because they followed this man, Christus, or Cresto, and you'll find in some versions. This doesn't mean that it had to have been Jesus. There were many people that were crucified under Pontius Pilate and during the time of Tiberius. Many people were crucified, not just the Jesus described in the Gospels. And you have to consider, too, where did Tacitus get his information from? If I tell you something, you want to know where I got that information from so that you can verify that. Where did Tacitus get his information from? he was probably only 8 or 9 years old at the time this happened, and he does not claim to have been an eyewitness of this event. Nor does he say that these Christians that he's talking about are the same group of people that we think of as Christians today either. And as I pointed out once again, even the followers of Serapis were called Christians. Their teachers were called the bishops of Christ, but they did not worship Jesus, they worshipped Serapis, who was a cross between Osiris and Apis, the bull. A modernization of a religion that was started ages before, but was modernized in the time of Ptolemy II. And this was very popular in Rome too. So, and if Tacitus was getting his information directly out of the Roman records, he would certainly have not just called Cresto or Christus or Crestus, which is simply a title. Just as we know Jesus Christ is not a first and last name, Christ that is followed by the Christians, that means the anointed one. It means the Messiah. It's a title. Official Roman records of an event would not contain just strictly a religious title of a person. They would include his name. So it becomes very obvious to me is that some of this information, at least in this passage, comes from Christians. And Tacitus is merely quoting information that he got from Christians. It doesn't mean that it is factual. Another point I wanted to make again is that if it was official Roman records that Tacitus was using, he would not have called Pontius Pilate a procurator, because that's what the governors were called in his own time, as procurators. But Pontius Pilate was a prefect. So once again, this is something else that would show us that this is not information that Tacitus gleaned out of any official Roman records. So, at any rate, as you can see, this passage just simply does not prove what Christians tell us it proves. And for good reason. Church fathers, other historians, no one quoted from this book, because from all probability nobody knew about this book until after it was printed in the 1460s. Thanks for listening.